Ken Trahan along with Lenny Vangilder. It's our first NBC Bank weekend preview brought to you by First NBC Bank with 31 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank. Well, we're in front of the Saints' iconic sign out here on Saints Drive via Airline Highway. And you know why. Training camp gets started today. Ton of fans watching. Morning sessions typically open. And, of course, high hopes for this 2013 New Orleans Saints team.
Yeah, and it starts with the return of Sean Payton. It's obviously the biggest, some media have called it the biggest offseason acquisition there has been. Basically, you've got your coach back, and you reunite Sean Payton and Drew Brees, and you see what those two have been able to do together for the better part of 6 seasons offensively, and kind of hoping to restore that magic. And obviously there'll be a close eye on the defense as well to see where some of these guys are lining up, what Rob Ryan has in store for this Saints defense, trying to bounce back 1 year after a record season of the wrong kind.
Yeah, certainly the two biggest acquisitions were coaches in Sean Payton and Rob Ryan, and we'll see how those additions manifest themselves. I think the Saints probably are somewhere in between the team that we saw in 2011 and the team that we saw in 2012.
Yeah, I think so. Is this a 13-3 team? You'd like to think that would be a possibility, but in reality, it's probably somewhere between that 13 and that 7-9 we saw last year. I think if you told any Saints fan right now you could have 10-6, 11-5, you'd take it in a heartbeat.
Certainly that is the case with most fans at this point. And from the standpoint of things to watch for, there are so many. Left tackle, clearly on offense, is the position that everyone has to pay attention to because it's such an important position. They didn't have a great player there, but they had a solid player there in Jermon Bushrod. The question is, do they have someone that can step into the void and fill that role and do a good enough job for this team to remain competitive?
Well, you got a couple of veterans in there, but the one guy I'm really interested in seeing and be interested to see just how much of a look he gets in camp is the draft pick, Teron Armstead, out of Arkansas Pine Bluff. And that, he's a guy who had some unbelievable numbers at the combine. He's a guy who's over 300 pounds who was running sub 4.7 40s. That is freakish almost. And, how does that translate into being able to keep rushing defensive ends out of Drew Brees' blind side? That remains to be seen. We'll see just what kind of player he is, but he's the one guy that intrigues me among the draft picks, really.
Certainly there are other questions to be answered. Backup quarterback, Seneca Wallace would seem to have the edge there. Third wide receiver, Joe Morgan would seem to have the edge there, but who are the fourth and fifth guys? That's certainly a question mark. Defensively, who are your linebackers? You got a lot of projects there. That to me is the biggest question. Is Martez Wilson a linebacker? Is Junior Galette a linebacker? Is Will Smith a linebacker? Can Jonathan Vilma certainly make peace with the 3-4?
A lot of questions, as you said, and I think it focuses on that second level at linebacker in terms of what, where some of these guys are going to line up, trying to get the best 11 players on the field. It's even been suggested at some point, hey, you take Roman Harper and move him down to outside linebacker, depending a lot, I would think, on the development of a Kenny Vaccaro, the number 1 pick. So a lot of options and a lot of moving parts that no doubt Rob Ryan will have at his disposal in determining who the right guys to get on the field are.
And then, of course, the intangibles. Just what is the attitude of this team? I suspect it's a very hungry football team with a chip on its shoulder, certainly with a coaching staff that has a chip on its shoulder that has something to prove. If there's such a thing as an advantage based upon intangibles, I think this team has it.
I agree, and no one is better at being able to draw those chips out, so to speak, than Sean Payton, being able to feed off the emotion of a team, of a negative situation, and turn it into a positive. And it'll be interesting to see just how that plays out. Yeah, I don't think you'll see that as much in camp as when you get to the regular season, but it's there.
It certainly is, and of course you can follow coverage on a day-to-day basis at sportsnoah.com of the Saints. Zephyrs back in town. They're right next door next Tuesday after being involved in the lengthy road trip, and of course the New Orleans Voodoo playing for a playoff spot Saturday night at Orlando. Winner take all. Winner goes to the playoffs. Loser goes home. So those other professional entities still going on, but very clearly the focus now shifts to the New Orleans Saints.
Without a doubt, and obviously we'll be talking about that every day in this town until they return to uniforms for the year and get ready to do it again in 2014. But for now, it's kind of like Christmas Eve, so to speak.
check out your present. There are plentiful. Lenny, thanks. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
That's our First NBC Bank weekend review and preview, I should say, brought to you by First NBC Bank. 31 locations from New Orleans to all parts in between. First NBC Bank. For Lenny, I'm Kenny. Have a great weekend and God bless.